You've seen a little trend, I think, that you're going to tell us about, which is a little small blip on the horizon right now for some, a bit of a wisp of dust, but it might be running towards us, and it might have some fantastic application to us in the nonprofit sector. So please tell us more about the unclaimed intangible properties. Faye.
All right. Well, it's actually known as the British Columbia Unclaimed Property Society. We just call it B-Cups, which, as you can imagine, generates all sorts of comments.
You call it B-Cups?
It was created by the province of BC in 2000 in order to administer its unclaimed property program, and it was transferred to the Vancouver Foundation in 2003. And a lot of people say, well, what is unclaimed property? And it typically includes credit union accounts, wages, insurance payments, court payments, interstate deaths where someone has died without a will, overpaid debt collections, or real estate deposits. What it doesn't include is real estate property or physical property such as vehicles or jewelry or electronics. So it really is, what it is money that's been left somewhere and has not been claimed. So although we call it property, the reality is that it's money. We don't deal with anything except for money. And there's probably over $90 million sitting in unclaimed property in BC alone. So you can imagine in Ontario what that dollar amount might be. So basically, B-Cups work with two stakeholder groups. We work with individuals that are searching for this unclaimed property or their money. And then we work with companies that are sitting on this unclaimed property. And the companies that are sitting on this unclaimed property, we refer to as the holders. And why do we use the term holders? It's because it designates the fact that they are actually holding the money. They don't own it. They are holding it in trust for the rightful owner. So holders typically are both profit and nonprofit organizations. It could include corporations, partnerships, credit unions, sole proprietorships, associations, societies, anything that where money may be left and it does not rightfully belong to the organization. So the law in BC, and I believe in Ontario, it was started in 1989. Ontario passed an Unclaimed Property Act, but in BC, what the act says is that the holders must make reasonable efforts to locate and notify owners of their property. And if the holder is unable to locate the owner, the property becomes unclaimed and then must be listed on a publicly available database. So there's two types of holders. There are mandatory holders and then there are voluntary holders. So the mandatory holders are regulated by law. They have to transfer the unclaimed property to the BC Unclaimed Property Society. So this includes municipal and provincial courts, credit unions, real estate agents, debt collectors, and funds that are held by the government, particularly the public guardian and trustee of BC. The voluntary holders are not regulated by law, but they should transfer the unclaimed property to the BC Unclaimed Property Society. It's one of the things that we're working with the provincial government for, to maybe put a little more teeth into it, so that by law they need to do it. Because right now it's just that they should do it. So this property includes trust funds, property insurance, closed pension plans, life insurance policies, brokerage accounts, and money orders, those kinds of things. So people would say, well, why submit? If I'm a business and I'm sitting there with unclaimed property or money sitting on my books, why should I submit it to the BC Unclaimed Property Society? Well, the property rightfully belongs to someone else, and your company may in fact be regulated by law to transfer this unclaimed property. These companies have to make reasonable efforts to locate and notify owners. And that may mean that they have to do a lot of work. They have to have a database of unclaimed property and a contact number, and they have to be available to answer the many calls that come in with saying, well, do I have an account? Did I leave any money with you? We already have those systems in place. The company may also have a responsibility to maintain these unclaimed records for a number of years. So this can become a very cost-intensive, labor-intensive initiative. So there's really lots of reasons why companies may choose to send the money to the BC Unclaimed Property Society, B-Cups, instead of having to do all this work themselves. So every year, a percentage of the funds that are unclaimed, where after a certain period of time, There's just no way that we can locate the rightful owners. And in that case, a certain percentage of those funds then are donated to Vancouver Foundation for charitable purposes. And to date, over $18 million since 2003 has been donated to Vancouver Foundation. That's pretty nice for us, for Vancouver Foundation, because the money comes in as unrestricted revenue. And if you're like us, that's usually the most difficult money to bring in, is money that's unrestricted. So to get $3 or $4 million a year that comes in that's unrestricted is a nice gift. It's allowed us to pay for new initiatives without pulling back on any of our granting money. So we've started a homelessness initiative called Street to Home. We've started a program to deal with new immigrants seeking employment. We've also been able to use the money to top up some of our fields of interest so we can grant a bit more. And we've also, in the last little while, been able to use it, because the Act allows us to do so, is to be able to use it for some of our own internal costs. So we've upgraded our IT system to accommodate better access by grantees and by donors. The question about why should the BC Unclaimed Property Society be, a nonprofit? Why should a nonprofit do the work, and then why should an organization like Vancouver Foundation receive the money? Well, the money comes from around the province. It's not just situated in one city. It is a provincial act. And so from our way of looking at it, the money should go back to the areas around the province as well. So we are a provincial funder. Although our name is Vancouver Foundation, we actually grant across the province. So it makes sense that we can get the money back across the whole province, which is where it came from. I think the advantage of giving it to something like a community foundation is that then it becomes a way of distributing the money without getting politics involved with it. In our province, unlike yours, our gaming money is totally managed by the government, and there's lots of questions as to whether or not the grants that are then made by gaming have a political slant to them, or certainly are partisan in nature. I think that what we've seen as well is that companies are more likely to remit their money when they're not obligated to, but it's voluntary, if in fact it is seen as going back into the community and it's not going into the government coffers, so to speak. I think it's definitely less work and less difficult for the government to have to administer this, to have to report on it and account for it, just to say, well, the money goes into B cups and is distributed throughout the whole province. So in case you're interested in what kinds of dollars are we talking about, it is significant. The work itself is a lot of work for the B Cup Society. The total number of properties that we have dealt with in the last 5 years is 19,000. So there's 19,000 unclaimed properties that have come into the system. The largest number of those have come through employment standards, 6,600. And real estate, so money that's been left in real estate, 2,500. But the biggest amount of money that comes in tends to come in from the courts. So of the 23 million that came in over the last 5 years, 9 million of that came from the courts, and 7 million came in from the public guardian. The employment standards, even though we receive more claims or more payments come in, it's only 1.2 million that's actually come in. So of those 19,000 properties that were given to us, we were able to reunite 1,900 people with their money. And most of those, again, came from employment standards, because it's easier to find people through employment where they've left their money through employment standards. So since inception, B Cups has received $40 million in terms of unclaimed property. They paid out about $7 million, and Vancouver Foundation has received 18 million of it.
Wow. So this is, Faye, I'm going to do this. I'm going to tell you, because I'm going to ask for a show of hands here. I'll tell you how it goes, because this is amazing. I mean, who doesn't want to hear about this pot of money out there? But I'm going to try to tie it back to Ontario here. Is this something that people are aware of as a source of funding in Ontario? Just a show of hands, if you're aware of it. Has anyone accessed it for their foundation successfully? Yes. Oh, you can't tell people. Oh, you can't. You cannot do it. Okay, so What is stopping us, Lynn, from?
In Ontario, the companies all keep their money. There is no
Okay.
properties
Okay.
program. They're talking about establishing one, and we want one that
Okay.
has back to community aspect.
Okay. So,
If I can interject, in 1989, Ontario set up the Unclaimed Property Act, but they have not really implemented it. And they're having consultations now, as I understand it, to say, how should it be implemented? And I think the nonprofit group should actually say, all right, we believe we should be part of this in terms of
Yes.
receiving the funds that cannot be traced back to their rightful owners.
so how long have you been able to do this in BC? How many years?
We've done it since 2003.
And
So
what
it's-
was the turning point? What got you at the table? I mean, if there was one thing that seemed to unlock the or get you access into or get you at that table, what was it?
I think convincing the government that it was in their best interest to get this off their books and to allow the money to go back to the charities. We acknowledge the role of government. I can tell you the agreement with the government is, I don't know, 45 pages long. So it's not quite as easy and slam dunk as what it might sound now, certainly setting it up. But I think convincing the government that that they would not have to take responsibility for this.
Administering it and so on. Well, we happen to have a premier here opening our conference talking about wanting to extend and have that conversation. So maybe that bodes quite well.
You know, I think, for no other reason, it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. The money came to the...
Yeah. Now, and just another clarification. So now that it's up and running and that pot of money is being accessed in some cases, you have to make the argument that it's for community benefit. So Vancouver Foundation is provincial-wide. Has there been instances where small local charities and nonprofits have been able to access that money?
Well, they access it through our granting program. So we
Okay.
grant to all sorts of sized organizations around the province. And I think that's why the provincial government was interested in us doing it, as opposed to giving it to the 55 individual community foundations or one. The fact that we grant around the province in 12 different fields, anybody can apply for it.
Wow. All right, so a word of encouragement, a bit of a cheerleading for taking this on in Ontario. Can you offer hope that we can get this?
Yes, and just I think that generates support for why it should be done, why the money should go back to the nonprofit association.
All right. Thank you very much, Faye.
You're welcome.
Okay.